So that's where your Twins watch is at right now. Ricky Nolasco, stay in the bullpen, stay injured, just stay off the mound as a starter. That's one of the best things that could happen for the Twins for the remainder of the year. So there's my thoughts on that. All right, moving on to a tiny bit of quick golf. Justin Rose won the PGA tournament that was played this last weekend. I can't remember the name of it. I couldn't tell you what the name of the tournament this weekend is either. It's just a regular season schedule type of one most people don't care about, like I said. But Justin Rose, one of my new favorite players from the Masters, won this last weekend. It was his 8th tournament, I want to say, his 8th career win on the PGA Tour, something like that. And then the main thing is that the Players' Championship, TPC Sawgrass, is going to be next week from Thursday to Sunday. That is the 5th major, the unofficial major, and in my opinion, one of the coolest golf courses in the world. And I would love to see them turn that course into the annual PGA Championship course so that there was one location for that major. I think that's why that major loses its luster and why the Masters is considered the biggest, is because it's at the same course and it just creates different dynamics. But that's a different story for a different day. But anyway, that'll be next week. There's your golf news. We've also got a little bit of UFC news. Jon Jones has been stripped of his title. He has quite a bit of legal issues to work out before he can rejoin UFC. He's basically banned from UFC until further notice. Dana White was on ESPN earlier today talking about it. I watched it, and yeah, like I said, he's got lots of personal issues, legal issues that he has to get sorted out and dealt with before he can think of being a professional fighter again. And that's where he's at. So that's the UFC news for right now. Tiny bit of horse racing news, believe it or not. I've never talked horse racing before. The Kentucky Derby is this weekend. That's right. It's the 141st annual Kentucky Derby running this Saturday at Churchill Downs. I'm sure it'll be on NBC sometime in the afternoon. There are 20 horses in the race. I've read that it's a very deep race where, I don't know anything about any of these horses or jockeys or horse racing in general, other than that they run around X amount of times and the fastest one wins. That's about my extent of knowing it. But so it sounds like it's a very competitive, anybody's guess field this year in the Kentucky Derby, and that's great if you're a casual gambler. You can be like me and not know anything about any of the competitors and just place a couple $5-10 bets on, who your gut tells you got a good feeling about, or what names you like, stuff like that, or what positions they're starting in, or anything. But so that's your Kentucky Derby preview. It's this Saturday. It'll likely be on NBC sometime in the afternoon, and there's 20 horses in it, and it's the 141st annual running at Churchill Downs. If you like horse racing, boom. It doesn't matter your sports flavor. It's going on this weekend. So just another example. All right, I'm going to squeeze in a tiny bit of WWE news real quick before a real quick short balls deep thought of the day. And we got to wrap up the show. We're going to hit about the 2-hour mark. Holy moly. But we needed to. Too much stuff to talk about. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. I hope you're still stuck with me here. And again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you listening to the show. So in WWE news, the biggest news, yesterday, the sports entertainment pro wrestling world lost an all-time legend, a Minnesota legend, mind you, all-time great, Mr. Vern Gagne. Now, if you're old enough to remember or whatnot, Vern Gagne was the mastermind, the man behind the AWA Wrestling Association up here in Minnesota, where such superstars as Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair made their breakthrough into the pro wrestling business. He trained those two guys, gave them pretty much their character ideas and personalities and moves and whatnot, along with tons of other wrestlers. He was a United States Olympian on their wrestling team. He served in the Marines. He is a graduate of the University of Minnesota Gophers. I believe he was on their wrestling squad. He was also an accomplished football and baseball player, an all-around ambassador for sports entertainment, and just a great guy and a pioneer in his field and line of work. He created main events in what a main event was at a wrestling, or could be and would grow into. That he was a huge part of the cultivation and evolution of that. So a lot of people in the pro wrestling sports entertainment industry owe a huge thanks in remembrance of Vern Gagne, who passed away yesterday at the age of 89 years old. Rest in peace, Vern Gagne. In other WWE news, a whole bunch of stuff that isn't important and nobody cared about and wasn't very entertaining happened at Extreme Rules. The Payback pay-per-view will have a triple threat main event match where Seth Rollins will defend his title against Randy Orton and Roman Reigns. Just what Roman Reigns needs to help get him over and push him is another match jobbing in the main event as an extra competitor where he has no chance of coming out with the belt. But it could be a really entertaining match. So, and then also Daniel Bryan, current Intercontinental Champion, did not perform at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view this last Sunday. He is currently out of action for an undisclosed period of time. They have not stripped him yet of the IC, which suggests that they have a fairly reasonable return timetable for him, and they are hoping that they can simply pass us over for a month or so and keep that title on him without stripping it. One of the ways I believe that they have chosen to do that is by returning the King of the Ring tournament, which they had started Monday this week on Raw and then concluded last night on the WWE Network for just $9.99 a month. Live, if you have that, which I do. Any real WWE fan has WWE Network. If you're a WWE fan who doesn't have WWE Network, then you're not a real WWE fan, unless you literally can't afford it. That's the only way. But anyway, they brought back the King of the Ring tournament, made it a 2-day thing on Raw, first round, and then the final rounds were yesterday live on the network. Bad News Barrett ultimately won that over Adrian Neville, so I believe that based off of the selection of all the people that were in that tournament and the timing of it, that is simply their way of getting the Intercontinental Championship and Daniel Bryan forgotten about without having to do anything with it, so that they can bring it back when Daniel Bryan is healthy. So that's what we got for WWE, and now we're ready to go to Balls Deep Thought of the Day. Thanks again for tuning into this massively long, pushing 2-hour episode of the show this week, the longest we've ever done here. Can't thank you enough. Every week, Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, the show is on thanks to the good people at WNLMradio.com, Northern Lights Radio. So thanks to everybody. And boy, let's see, Balls Deep Thought of the Day. How deep are we going to go with this? I mean, there's no such thing as too deep, so we'll see. All right, here we go. A real good quick one. A quickie for Balls Deep Thought of the Day. I love it. Okay, here is our quickie Balls Deep Thought of the Day. We talked about all the stuff going on this weekend. Thursday, NFL Draft. Thursday through Sunday, we've got NFL Draft, hockey playoffs, NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball rivalry week, Kentucky Derby, Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Money Mayweather in boxing. So much stuff. So here's the Balls Deep quickie thought of the day. If you could only watch one event, and now let's say you were to choose the golf tournament that's going on the weekend, wherever it's at, whatever it's called, you can count all 4 days. So if you chose the draft, for example, you can count every round of the draft. But here's the thought: if you could only watch one event, one sporting event, this entire remainder of the weekend, Thursday through Sunday, what would you watch? Would you watch the NFL Draft and shaft the Minnesota Wild in the playoffs if you're from Minnesota? Would you, if you're in Minnesota, do you watch the Wild? Do you watch the NFL Draft with the Vikings? Do you watch the fight that could bring boxing back? The only relevant boxing fight we've had in over a decade, arguably? And do you watch Manny versus Money? Are you a huge baseball guy and you're like, nope, my team's playing my rival a bunch, all weekend, and I'll watch those 3 games or 4 games? If you could only watch one sporting event this week, what would it be? I'll tell you what mine is. It's the NFL Draft. Duh. You kidding me? I love football. You should see my freaking notebook that's illegible with chicken scratch of player names and numbers and rankings, and my God, it's disturbing borderline. So for the record, I would pick the NFL draft, but I would be very torn with a close second with that Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather fight, and then followed thirdly by my Minnesota Wild. Not because I love them any less, but because I can watch them after Sunday. They'll still be playing yet. They'll only be 2 games into the series, so that's the logic on that. All right. That's all the time we got. We're past all the time we got, but that's all the time we got for this week. Thanks again so much for tuning in. I'm Scotty Ball. This is Balls Deep Sports Talk every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Central Standard Time here on WNLMradio.com. Enjoy the sports this weekend. I'm out. Peace.